Hello, viewers. This is Dr. Kamar Shima, and today at this podcast, the Global South podcast, I have a very interesting a guest who is an expert on Middle East, Mr. Flavius Cabamaria. He's the president of the Middle East Political and Economic Institute in Romania. And he's the one guest I can tell you in Europe who understand Iran a lot. We had a very good conversation in his last trip to Islamabad. So, Mr. Flavius, thank you very much for coming at this Global South podcast with me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chima, inviting me to be part in your uh, podcast.
Thank you very much. What do you make of this war? Many people who are writing in Europe that this was an unnecessary war. This is a war nobody was expecting, and particularly when the response came that it is not being supported by the international law, and to the shock for many, no one almost in Europe supports it. So please help us to understand this.
From my perspective, reaching this very hot point, I would like to say that's why because the war, it's meaning that everything is changed. That from a calm situation or a diplomacy to a certain point that we are here. Based on my understanding, I pointed out four main causes that reach this I would like to say point of striking. The first one I would like to say that is a profound security dilemma in which both sides perceive an existential threat. That means Israel and Iran, they were on this level. Existential threat reached the highest point, I think, in their rhetoric from both sides in order to have a new space of talks. And the second issue here or cause is a power transition dynamic in which Iran regional influence has grown while American commitment has appeared uncertain. That means in the last couple of months and also year, we notices a kind of normalization relationship between Iran and GCC countries. There was a certain trips and agreements between them and Iran, a kind of atmosphere of cooperation. That means engaging Iran in many other regional activities. That draw also this kind of question mark or attention from US that Iran role is getting higher and higher in the Middle East from one side. On the other side, Israel, of course, Israel perceive these regional challenges from perspective from Iranian side. That also on the other hand, based on the security strategy of US, they say they are going to use another type of approach to the Middle East, using more with partners, more with friends, working on different levels, and that's why it was a kind of disengagement military from US from that region. But as I said at the beginning, Iran role is getting a little bit higher than they would like to have it. And the third point is the role of belief ideological commitments that readers compromise politically toxic on all sides. This happened during the negotiation. This kind of compromise was almost impossible from both sides to overcome a certain red lines. As we noticed that everything happened during the negotiation. The second time during the negotiation between US and Iran. Here, what is the meaning when you reach the war level is that a negotiation will fall, but was not the case, or one side is going to abandon or withdraw from the negotiation. I think also US on this situation abandoned this negotiation and reached the point of war. And the second issue or the second issue that you can reach a war situation is that when the economic sanction that was put pressure on Iran didn't reach a very clear conclusion or resolution. So what both causes or sub causes reach these third causes that I expresses. The four, in my point of view, is that underlining resources competition that ties the conflict to global energy security. Here it's a little bit broadly discussion and could be developed on different way, but we try to stick in one very short version here. As we notice in Venezuela, the issue with the US on oil in Venezuela was not necessary to use the oil from its own needs, but it's about to control the currency in which it sell oil. And here also in the region, in Middle East and Gulf region, Persian Gulf region, is that is the idea, is to influence or to control the currency in which all these kind of energy resources are transaction. Particularly, have you noticed Saudi Arabia and other country, they have trade deal with China in yuan, and also Qatar selling gas in yuan. So there is a kind of course, also Iran using different types of currency or methods in order to sell its own oil. That means even though with barter, uh, ma- main quantity of Iranian oil is selling to China. So all these are four major causes that we reach this point. That was almost no return point. And for sure, if you talk about from Iranian side, if they were respected or not, because you said at the beginning, nobody, many people didn't expect to reach this point of war. From from Tehran perspective, there was at least two major tendency. One tendency was there after the war in June. They are going to prepare for the second round of conflict because that war was not concluded with signing a ceasefire or certain very clear conclusion. So there was a kind of narrative also in Tehran. They started to prepare for a second round. All these things, there is that contradiction, but also on the other side was the other tendency. They supported to engage in diplomacy and negotiation. That's also happening, but in my opinion, one option was not excluded than another option. So they started with negotiation to try to reach a kind of deal, but on the same time they prepare for a conflict. All these things, this kind of mood after June 2020, 25th in Tehran started that kind of economic challenge. A market was a kind was frozen. The market, trade market, I would like to say. That's why also in December, therefore in December, we reach a kind of economic hardship and challenge. Uh, at least in real estate or other goods was almost blocked in
I will
terms.
come to I will
Yeah.
come to that point as well. But one thing I really I got your 4 points, and I think they do make a sense, Mr. Flavius.
Mm,
So I want to make some small questions so that we can have a maximum,
yeah.
output for our friends. What do you make? Do you think the Arab countries will join the war, and they will respond directly to Iran? Because only I think more than 2,000 projectiles were fired on UAE alone. What do you make of that, please?
Yeah, so this is one of the challenge, and the strategy or tactics that use Iranians. It's a kind of risky strategy they try to use. But what what is the aim of this striking from Iranian side? There are two major aims here. One aim is that one that most of us say putting pressure on Gulf countries in order to put after the pressure on US to de-escalate or to reach a conclusion with Iran in the negotiation. This is one thing, putting pressure and create economic challenges. But on the second time, the second issue is that Iran try to exploit on a political gap in these all countries. What means the differences between elite, the ruling people, and citizen, because citizen and Iran portrayed this kind of strike to say if you are going to join and to support this operation, that means you are going to support Israeli operation. So that inflammate the population, citizens of that country are there. So if you are joining this operation, these military strikes, that means we are going to support Israel. And there is a kind of contradiction what elite, ruling party or monarchy, or there are between up and bottom. So they are in that very challenge situation that could spark different riots, different movements inside that countries. We know this is one things, and the other things also, Shia population from the countries in the region could also play a very significant role. So that's why they try to use a kind of very sensitive, or to use diplomacy so far, to be very precaution, very uh, 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 paying attention or each movement. So that's why I think, from my opinion, or that they are not really would like to join, firstly, to join on this kind of support, fully support of US. There are
Hmm.
these two major issue are there. uh, but the most important one is that the difference in views between elite and citizen.
Citizens. So, Mr. Flavius, do you think that what were Americans expecting, that they will go, they will attack, and they will change the regime? Do you really think that was basically the purpose there? And they couldn't get it done, and now they are more, they're getting more and more into this war, and many of the friendly friends in the region, they're asking them, "You have pushed us to this war," and I think the Arab Street, which you were mentioning, they're also raising the sentiments that this entire security architecture in the Middle East is for the Israel. So they are not protecting the Arabs. So what do you make of that? Do you think that the United States was expecting this? And secondly, do you think that the Arab street or the Arab elite can push the American authorities to stop the war? So far, they have failed. And do you also understand? What do you make of what could be the exit strategy for the United States in case they have to leave immediately? Because it seems there is a lot of mess in terms of in so many ways.
So I think firstly, uh, US apply a very simple strategy. I think they try to use a simple solution that decapitate the leader of, or the head of a country, or doesn't matter, the leadership. And a simple solution to a complex problem. It's a complex problem, and with a society, they are very deep rooted in this nationalism, independency, conscience in religious, and based on their long tradition history. So that was a kind of, I think this was the mistake, didn't read very well the effect of this kind of striking, using this very precise. Maybe they expected in a certain way that the whole things will fall down if you hit the leadership, but for sure. So for this strategy, for example, uh, I- Israel maybe has a very clear strategy in Iran. Maybe you can say certain things over there. But for US, this at the operational level, I would like to say, in the military strike, maybe they have a very clear objective. But on the political level, strategical level, I don't think so. They are very. It was very clear. They nuances all the time. They change the objectives all in these latest 2 weeks. They changed it. Every day was changed the aim, the final aim, from the military dimension to the political dimension. We do not know, even though currently, as you mentioned, in order to reach an exit plan, they say currently they are not going. For example, regime changes is not the priority of this operation, even though Israel and US admitted that completely neutralize nuclear sites is not their own, or to extract based on different operation, special forces operation, extract uranium, enrich uranium from Iran, is not on the priority list. Their priority list currently are on this way to destroy as much as possible ballistic capability. And the second issue is to try to create a fracture between support forces, resistance forces, Basij, and the population, Basij, IRGC, and population. But on the other side, if you started to hit or to target civilian infrastructure and to target close to the civilian other facilities, for sure, I think, in my opinion, the effect is totally opposite. That means population or majority of the population is going to rely around the flag, around the main code, and in order to support, because they should choose between chaos, insecurity, and of course their own system, even though some of them they are not in favor. So these
Mm,
are the situation. And what you said, if they are going to, anyway, as a broadly as a conclusion here on this, US didn't expect this kind of reaction. Maybe they didn't read very well all the detail, the doctrine of Iran, and what is the aim, strategical aim of Iran. But if you read or you have the lesson learned from Iraq-Iran war or tanker war on that period, 1980, 81, 80, 80. So on that period, you can have a lot of lesson learned, even though, as you mentioned, on that time, Iran regionalized the conflict, hit it, the GCC countries, even though in that time, that is, it's supposed to happen also now, to regionalize. And Iran said, if it's going to happen, this strike, we are going to regionalize and to answer with all means, will be all out war. That should be expected, but maybe they didn't believe on all this or capacity of Iran. They have this capacity and how they prepare for the response. So we reach
mm,
this conclusion. But on the other things, in terms of politically, here is the most very important this issue. From political point of view, Israel or Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, gained a lot of political inside Israel. Maybe he will going to succeed in October election and will solve his case in trial case. But on the other side, in US, any kind of prolonging the war, causing damages in terms of human resources, logistical issue, inflammation, that is not working in favor of Trump in the political way. So he is a very thin rope. Now he is working in a very thin rope on this particular time, President Trump. But on the
yeah,
other side,
yeah,
Iran's strategy is very clear. They need to, as for them, a prolonged war to cause a lot of damages for them in order to everything this, in order to survive the regime. For each side define their own victory on their own way. For
mm,
Iran, the victory is there to survive of this operation, because it's very obviously both sides, for the first time in the history, Israel and US conducted a joint operation, and US for the first time conducted a joint operation plan, conducted a joint operation, even though within NATO framework on another particular moments in the history, that means Libya, that means Iraq, Afghanistan, US planned and conducted. The other country just joined, as a support, as a support, but was not involving in all these things. Now, for the first time, they play together this
mm.
kind of operation. So, and we and in terms of Iran, as I mentioned, for them it's a kind of survival.
Yeah. So, Mr. Flavius, what do you make of Europe? The Europe is not, united in this war. The Great Britain was, the United Kingdom was, reluctant to join earlier. Spain has a different understanding. Norway has a different understanding, and European Union it seems very silent. What do you make of Europe of this war? How do they look? Or how are they looking this?
There- Here are few things to be mentioned. Of course, at the beginning, European Union just tried to analyze the event without engaging too much, to say too much things, have only a diplomatic statement and uh, following the tendency. Now, after that, of course, there are these three major countries in Europe: German, France, and UK, as you mentioned. they have a particular relationship, especially in terms of with Iran, because they were part of nuclear agreement. So, but anyway, French and Britain, they have another particular interest in the region. That means this kind of approaches is differently than European Union. European Union as a whole, each country has different approaches, different opinion on this. Eastern European country, different approaches. Western European country, Eastern approach, different approaches. In terms of Spain, what is the aim of Spain? Because it's very interesting as you mentioned Spain. Spain are very sensitive on this issue because of their involvement in Iraq. After the involvement in Iraq war, they had a very tough terrorist attack in Atocha railway station, if you remember. So on that attack was kind of results of engaging in that conflict in the Middle East. So from that moment, Spain tried to see their own national interest to avoid any kind of internal challenges, and they have also a lot of Muslim population in their country. Of course, the vision of Prime Minister of Spain, he has a different vision than it's a kind of leftist than other leaders from Europe. So Spain has this kind of position from these reasons. On the other side, UK try to use and to play a kind of role because they have a military base in the Middle East, but on the same time they don't want to engage too much with Iran. So European Union, that's even though previously they was not so engaged to change the course in the Middle East. Have you noticed also US President Trump say we do not need your assistance, we do not need your help. But as you mentioned, now you cannot disconnect the conflict in the Middle East or in the Gulf region with at least Eastern European countries, because Black Sea currently we can say is kind of links to the Gulf region, Persian Gulf, in terms of connectivity. The main influence of the challenge from Europe is in terms of energy resources, particularly gas, not necessarily oil, but other goods, especially in agriculture, fertilize, and other very important goods that are coming from petrol. So that's influence a lot in Europe in terms of energy. So you cannot disconnect freedom of navigation, energy issue with European situation. Now Europe try to find out certain solution. France use very, I would like to say, uh, they benefit from this issue to project to say to show their leadership in the strategical way. So they say we are going to organize a kind of um, 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 assistance navy fleet to ensure the traffic inside the Strait of Hormuz. So they try to portray themselves to be the leader in strategical issue in Europe. But on the other side, Macron is not that strong also internally. There is a kind of discontinuity on this issue. Of course, Europe are very concerned about this issue in terms, as I already mentioned, this issue. So, but they cannot influence the whole situation. They cannot put pressure on US.
Okay, so what do you make of the role of a new supreme leader? Do you think it is being said that it is the IRGC which is basically calling the shots? They have taken over, in fact, and this office of supreme leader will be now under the control of the IRGC because the new supreme leader does not have that kind of public exposure before. And at the same time, the view is that he's not he's not in public because there are still chances that there was a penetration within the IRGC by the Israeli intelligence agency. So what do you make of the new supreme leader? Do you think that he can fill the gap left by his father?
So yeah, this is also, as you mentioned, very important issue. So firstly, he was choose during a very particular moment under the crisis. Uh, in order to send a very political signal to the population, it was there. We need a very soon a leadership, a leader, in order to follow the same line. Because of this time of crisis, IRGC is empowered to secure the country and to respond. They power still there in this particular moment because of the crisis. That's why we know there is a very well known the relationship between Moshtaba Khamenei and IRGC was not certain things that is not unknown. So they are also engaging in supervising the people they are part of assembly of experts. So on this moment for them was a kind of necessity to have a continuation on the same line. Being there in power, they analyze that this is the right moment. This is the right moment, this is the right person in order to follow the same politics and to have a kind of upper hand IRGC on this environment. But on the other side, as you mentioned, in terms of there are two major issues here. During the time of Ali Khamenei, he was not so in favor of let to his son the leadership to pass the leadership. He said it's not that wise decision, but maybe on this time they say we can have on the other way, not father let the his leadership to his son, but we choose his son. So they could say in a different way, we choose, not father choose. So they could deal with this kind of issue that many people talk about this. And on the other things, maybe here are a little bit discussion about in terms of the level of religious education. It's not that rank, Ayatollah rank, or the most educated in religious sides, but based on the compromise. On this particular time, they analyze, they say this is the right person in this current situation, and they expected that US and Israel, particularly US, they are not fully agree, or not fully, they are not agree with this kind of election. But they also like to say, no, we are independent. We're going to choose the people would like to choose, not the people they you like to have it. So this was, and another being, that's why, as the beginning of our talks also said, this kind of very simple solution didn't work very well in order to change the whole system. Why? Because now was not the time to have a different political games different behind the scene in order to choose the new leader. Was a very short period of time, was almost they should choose very quickly. So was not time to make political games behind the scene.
Yeah. So, one last quick question, if I can ask you, please. That is on India. India considers itself as a global leader of the global south, but there was even an article yesterday by economist that we find that the leadership in India is very silent. They are not playing a role. They are not doing anything. And for example, if you saw that just before one day before the war, Prime Minister Modi was in Israel. Uh, so what do you see the role of India as a country of the global South, and they try to do a lot of influence, or they try to do host conference on global South every year, but they are not talking anything when there is a conflict in the global South.
Yeah, this conflict put India in the very also difficult position because, as you mentioned, very clearly, uh, Prime Minister Modi paid a visit to Netanyahu before the conflict, but on the same time, India has a kind of investment in Chabahar port in Iran. They develop different infrastructure there and in Baluchistan province. So they are present there. In order to engage now, they should, or India should take sides in the certain, yeah, in or Iran or Israel in one, but they need from both sides, they need in order to fulfill regional aim. They need also Iran from different reasons, as we know, in order to have access on different places, even though to Afghanistan, even though to this corridor to the northern part. And also they needed, as we notice, to benefit from this crisis, to get also some revenue or petrol, oil, or gas from Russia. With exception, they are very precaution in terms of with in relation with US, not also to inflame US, to have extra more sanction or targets, tariff target on them. So they decided to use this kind of ambiguity, I would like to say, to this war in order to fulfill their own needs. Even though they are dependent 50% of the oil, and of the oil are coming from is coming from Gulf region. So they need this kind of ambiguity here to survive with both or three major parts engaging the war.
So one last quick question on China.
Yes,
I
yes,
left it.
yes.
What do you make of role of China in this war? That is one thing. The second thing is that there are rumors that when President Trump is about to travel to China and he wanted to control, like Venezuelan oil, the Iranian oil, so that he can better bargain with his presidency. Do you buy this theory, or and what is the overall role of China in this war? What are they talking in terms of diplomacy at the UN Security Council, or do you think that they have the capability to influence in any way the outcome of the war, or are they providing any kind of intelligence to the Iranians or the military hardware? What do you make of their role?
So China started this engaging in this war as usually, or we expected to do in the diplomatic way, just statement, very diplomatic statement. They are very consistent in their diplomacy, following their own steps. This is the first thing. The second issue, even though they are dependent in a certain way from the oil or energy resources from the Gulf regions, so they know how to deal with both sides, Iran and GCC. Here is the major point here. China could play a role now more than other parts in order to have a kind of understanding between GCC country and Iran. Maybe they are going to have this kind of trips to deal with, or to calm down, de-escalate this tension between GCC country and Iran, because all of them are major trade partner to China. So in this term, China needs all of them, not to put in the balance one against another. On the other things, as you mentioned, in terms of military capability, on the other things, uh, before also the war was different arrangement of agreement between Iran and China to sell different weapons with different capabilities. Maybe this agreement will be going to fulfill, and also maybe China, but on the in the shadow way, they are going to assist Iran on the certain part. Uh, but on the other side, Iranian side so far didn't ask Chinese for too many things because of their own proud. They are very proud nation, and they would like to ask for assistance only when they are needed. But what role China could play? They could play more in terms of assistance in space issue with satellites. They have a very good satellite Baidu system, and if they put available to Iran to use Baidu, or give to Iran rights to use Baidu system instead of GPS system, there is a kind of shift in using missiles, ballistical missiles. So far we cannot see this kind of escalation. China are following their own interests very in a very precaution way, try to fulfill their own interests. And in terms of this challenge with energy, they say they, even though they are impact there, but it's not that high because the energy mix of China is a very good one. They have, even though resources for a long time, and they started to develop different alternatives. That's now strategy of China, develop alternatives of avoiding checkpoints makes sense. As you notice, Pakistan China economic corridor is one of the options of China to avoid Malacca Strait. That is about Malacca. So here, maybe they use different other strings in order to get oil from or other energy reserves from on that part. There are also land corridors. There are also land corridors. There are middle corridors. There are different other connectivity. So Chinese intention is not going to inflammate, but they will support politically Iran and the level of United Nations for sure, because any kind of fall down, if Iran will fall down as a worst case scenario, this is a geopolitical tragedy for the region, but also influence the position of China in the very near future in terms of relationship with the Middle East. So there it's they are very precaution. They are following. Maybe in the last moment they are going to engage more, but so far is this a position. And that's the other very hot point will be the meeting between President Trump and Xi. We hope to happen. I do not see so far. Other analysts said is not going to happen because of this conflict. But from my perspective, both sides I think need to talk. Also China and also US. They have their own interests. Both sides they have their own interests. Interest of China is not linked with interest of others. They have their own interests. They are just in the very hot political discussion. They finalize the political plenary. So in order to fulfill their new 5 years term. So
Mhm. Yes, I think they will talk, and this is not just that the Chinese cannot say them to the president of the United States, no, that you can't come in the middle of the war, and I think the Americans administration failed to put pressure on China in terms of the tariffs they had. So in any way, Trump likes to do a bargain, or Trump likes to talk. That he should have more power to engage with China for getting results. And I think denying China energy would have given him an upper hand in terms of which he got with, by the way, by dealing every other country in the world, but not with China. But thank you very much, Mr. Flavius. It was an interesting conversation to help us to understand that what in Europe while sitting you were looking this war, because Europe has a different view of this war, and that was very challenging for the United States. And I think first it was the tariff wars which started, then and before it was Russia war, Ukraine war. The euro was under pressure, economy and all that. Then it was tariff wars, and now this war. So there's a lot of developments in the global politics, and there's a lot of challenges which are emerging in so many ways, in terms of either it is inflation, mobility, in so many ways. But thank you very much for your expert opinion, and I know you in our last conversation in Islamabad, we loved your perspective on Iran. You have a very deep insight on Iran. Thank you very much, Mr. Flavius.
thank you very much, Dr. Chima, and hope to see you soon also in Islamabad. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.